Welcome to Illuminations Radio, here to inspire you to go deeper into your roots, to go back into your true self. As you seek within, you will discover real health, joy, and wealth. As you travel through space-time of your own heart-mind, you will come to recognize you, and only you as master, knowing that deep within your soul lies every attained goal. Yes, everything you've been after. Greetings, this is Tamara Westwood, your host. We all know what the problems are, but here at Illuminations Radio, together we seek solutions in every aspect of life. Subscribing to the free podcast at the iTunes Store. Search iTunes Podcasts for Illuminations, healthy food for the mind, body, and soul.
Oh, I welcome you to another episode of Illuminations Radio. I thank you so much for joining us. And as I said, we're doing something special today. We're actually recording a video of the show live as we record online on the Internet. And so what we're going to do is to speak about a wonderful, new, very controversial issue. And what we're talking about today is, of course, cannabis. And what you see me looking at here is actually the switchboard on my laptop. And so we're going to be recording live. I am waiting for our guests to log in. But as we do that, I'm going to be speaking a little bit of information just to fill in the gaps. A lot of people think about cannabis or marijuana, ganja, fire, dank. Oh, it's got so many different names. Trees, bud, Mary Jane. Oh, it's something that most Americans and most people all over the world are familiar with. Everybody's tried it at some point. Even our presidents have, even though they didn't inhale or didn't enjoy it. But what we're going to be speaking about today is a lot of the political issues around it. But the main topic is about health. That we're recognizing that the ancients have known always that marijuana is actually a healing herb, just like all the other herbs that were given to us by our Creator. So we're going to go into a lot of detail on that issue. But I just want to give a little bit of data about it. The mere fact that archaeologists have discovered that it's always been in human use in our society since 2737 BCE. Now, that's a long time, you know. It's always been around. It's only been criminalized since 1938, and everybody remembers reefer madness, right? Well, we're going to get into some issues. This is an herb, a very, very, very important plant that's been around forever. It's smoked, it's vaporized, it's eaten and infused food and drink. It's actually juiced raw for healing properties. It's rubbed into the skin for pain. Studies have shown that it's very effective for many, many ailments, including nausea, vomiting, MS, insomnia, lack of appetite, spasticity, HIV/AIDS, glaucoma, alcohol abuse, bipolar, depression, epilepsy, fibromyalgia, arthritis. Oh, it just goes on and on and on. Now, medical use is legal in many states, but it's still considered an offense by the federal government. It's also spoken of as one of the most dangerous drugs, or a gateway drug that can lead to other drugs. But today we're going to talk about how it's beneficial for healing, because that's what we talk about here on Illuminations Radio. And I have a very special guest. His name is Dr.Jake Falice, and he is from the Cascadia Natural Health Clinic. He is an expert on on this subject, and he's an advocate for the medical use of marijuana for healing, not only for healing of the body, but also alleviating pain. So with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and welcome our wonderful guest, Dr. Falice.
Hi, Tamara. How are you doing today?
Hello. I'm wonderful. I'm so grateful you could take out time in your busy day to be with us. As you know, we're doing something special. We're actually doing a video recording of this interview, and we're going to make sure that it goes viral. So we're going to make sure this good information gets out to everyone who's able to receive it. But I just want to welcome you, definitely, to Illuminations Radio. And because you're brand new to the family, Doctor, I would like for you to give us a little bit of information about your background, a bio, if you will.
Sure, Tamara. I am a naturopathic physician in the Seattle area in private practice. I also do work in conjunction with Cascadia Natural Health, as you said, and my main area of focus is natural solutions for chronic pain. And one of the things that I like to do most for my patients is help them to get off of their pain-relieving medications, the more dangerous medications, such as the opiate class of medications. And so what we do with patients who have chronic pain and chronic disease is we work with them using natural therapies, of which there are many, one of which is cannabis, as you had talked about. And we really do have a lot of good success helping people, A, control their pain, and B, reduce their use of some of the more dangerous pain-relieving medications, such as OxyContin and Percocet, that probably a lot of the listeners have heard about.
Oh, that's important work. I'm so fascinated by all healing. You know, I know you're new to the family here, but this is what we talk about: all types of natural ways of taking wonderful care of our bodies. And
yes.
I just applaud you for the wonderful work you're doing, Doctor.
Well,
I just
thank
want to
you.
ask. Go ahead. I'm sorry, but there are a few delays in online radio, so we might stumble over each other's words. But no worries. So go right ahead.
One of the things that I would like to just put out there to the listeners is how wonderful of a therapeutic agent cannabis is. There are a lot of myths about cannabis that are not substantiated in science, and that I think that if we really look at what the science is telling us, it really is telling us that not only is cannabis an effective medication, but in my professional opinion, it is the safest natural therapeutic substance for pain relief that there is, period. And the main reason for that is because nobody has ever in history, in any of the peer-reviewed medical literature, nobody has ever died from an overdose of cannabis. Unlike, say, for example, the opiate class of medications, which here in our home state of Washington actually kill more people, twice as many people than car accidents are killed by just prescription opiates alone. So it just gives you an idea of the magnitude of the problem that we're facing here as a society in safely controlling chronic pain and disease. And as a country, since 1998, we have tripled our use of opiate-based pain medications within about a 14-year period. So there really is an epidemic going on of use of dangerous or relatively toxic medications for people who are in chronic pain and just trying to live their lives and get through their day. And so I think that cannabis gives something wonderful to offer a large number of these patients.
Oh, certainly. And Doctor, many of these opiates are quite addictive, are they not?
They are all addictive, and they also cause a host of other problems as well. The addiction piece is something that we are all familiar with. There's also something that's called end organ damage. So a lot of the pain-relieving medications can damage liver and kidneys as well. So it's not just that they're killing people, but they're also harming organs as well. And truthfully, patients on them over time, sometimes they need to be on them, but there's almost always a way that we can get our patients to reduce their use of the medications and still have good, if not better, pain control than before.
Oh, that is excellent. Now, there's a certain component of the cannabis plant. Everybody's familiar with THC, and certainly that's the one that people tend to get the high with. But you work with one, the CBDs. Could you please explain the difference between the two and how the CBDs work?
Absolutely, and if that's one thing that the listeners get out of the talk today, it would be the concept of CBD as a different chemical. So the cannabis plant is like a natural pharmacologic factory, and one of the molecules that it produces is THC, and THC is what gives the classic head high for cannabis, and THC is also associated with the majority of the side effects of cannabis. Some of the side effects much more minor than the opiate medications, but some of the side effects of THC are short-term memory loss, anxiety, irritability, sleeplessness, and in certain rare populations can predispose people who have a susceptibility to mental illness, can actually push them further towards that spectrum. Now, that's THC alone.
So glad you joined us for that. Stay tuned for the next segment and learn more. Welcome to Illuminations Radio, here to inspire you, to go deeper into your roots, to go back into your true self. As you seek within, you will discover real health, joy, and wealth. As you travel through space-time of your own heart-mind, you will come to recognize you, and only you as master, knowing that deep within your soul lies every attained goal. Yes, everything you've been after. Greetings, this is Tamara Westwood, your host. We all know what the problems are, but here at Illuminations Radio, together we seek solutions in every aspect of life, from health and spirituality to relationships and finance, and everything in between, with a variety of guests who are making a difference and shining examples in our collective adventure called life. Recording live on Blog Talk Radio from Seattle, Washington. But wherever you are in the world, join us live by logging into blogtalkradio.com/illuminations. Join the chat room or call 347-838-9577 to join in the conversation, ask a question, or just say hello. Or listen 24/7 by subscribing to the free podcast at the iTunes Store. Search iTunes Podcasts for Illuminations, healthy food for the mind, body, and soul. Welcome back for part 2 of Healing with Cannabis or Just Getting High with Dr. Falice.
Well, that is excellent. Now, there's a certain component of the cannabis plant. Everybody's familiar with THC, and certainly that's the one that people tend to get the high with. But you work with one, the CBDs. Could you please explain the difference between the two and how the CBDs work?
Absolutely, and if that's one thing that the listeners get out of the talk today, it would be the concept of CBD as a different chemical. So the cannabis plant is like a natural pharmacologic factory, and one of the molecules that it produces is THC, and THC is what gives the classic head high for cannabis, and THC is also associated with the majority of the side effects of cannabis. Some of the side effects much more minor than the opiate medications, but some of the side effects of THC are short-term memory loss, anxiety, irritability, sleeplessness, and in certain rare populations can predispose people who have a susceptibility to mental illness, can actually push them further towards that spectrum. Now, that's THC alone. What happens when we have the whole plant? The whole plant contains more than just one molecule. And in the genetic kind of database of the plant has the ability to make other molecules that actually have much better health benefits for most patients than THC. THC is useful for cancer patients with nausea and vomiting who are having trouble eating, but it is not the best molecule for pain. So for patients who are taking cannabis for their pain, they don't necessarily want a lot of THC in their medicine. In fact, for most of my patients, the preference is less THC and not more. And as you said, higher concentrations of the molecule CBD. CBD stands for cannabidiol. I encourage the listeners to Google that, CBD, Charlie Brown David. CBD is the best pain-relieving molecule in the plant, and what's interesting about it is, it does not give a head high, so it provides a relief for pain without the associated head high that a lot of the patients are trying to avoid. The other thing that it does that's very interesting is that it opposes the negative side effects of THC. So patients who are using cannabis with the CBD molecule in it, they get better pain relief, but they don't have the short-term memory issues that are associated with higher THC strains. And also CBD has many other benefits in addition to being a pain reliever. It's an anti-inflammatory, and it's also an immune modulator, so it's very good for patients with autoimmune disease, such as rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or multiple sclerosis that have pain in conjunction with their disease. The CBD molecule present in the plant makes it a much better medicine. There's a lot to say on this topic. Do you have any questions about what I've discussed with it so far?
Oh, well, certainly. A lot of people who actually grow cannabis aren't really clear on how to get that. Is that within a certain species? Is there a certain length that the plant is allowed to mature? Can you fill us in on some of that?
Yes, that's a great question. How to get CBDs? A little bit of background is since the mid to early 60s, cannabis has been bred as a street drug, so that its natural genetic composition has been altered through time through selective breeding. Cannabis growers from the 60s have wanted a plant that gets people high. And so just like humans have bred dogs to do what we want them to do, for example, huskies pull sleds, shepherds are good with herding animals, humans have bred the plants to do what we want it to do. And in the early phases of cannabis breeding, the main impulse was let's collectively try to develop strains that get people high and use it as a street drug. So as a result, a lot of CBD-containing genetics have been bred out of the plant. So then as your question, as you asked, how do we get CBDs? And there are really a few ways to do that. One is through laboratory testing. And in Washington State and in other states where cannabis is legal, there are testing companies. And the fees to test the cannabis have really become very affordable. They're in about the $40 range for a single batch now to test the cannabis. So if you are a grower and you have, if you're a patient in Washington, you're legally able to grow, you can have your plants tested to see if they have the medicine in it. But there's an easier way, and that way is that if you know of the genetics of the plant, for example, if you know that a certain plant is a CBD-producing plant, all of the clones of that plant are also going to make CBDs. So that although laboratory testing is important and I think the gold standard, there are other ways that patients and growers can be assured that the plant is a CBD producer. And patients will know right away also. They will notice they get a much better pain response from the cannabis that has CBD in it versus another type of cannabis that is strictly more of a THC-containing plant. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for that. Looks like we have a caller online that might have a question. Let's welcome our caller on. Yes, hello, caller in the 425. Did you have a question for Dr. Jake?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Oh,
yes.
Thank you so much for calling. Go right ahead.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
Caller?
I've heard before that cannabis is like the world's dangerous drug, and I was wondering, do you know why they might say that, or what causes it to be the most dangerous drug in the world?
Sure. Well, a lot of what happened, if you look at the history of cannabis in the late 30s, is there was a move to push and make the drug illegal. But cannabis is not a dangerous drug, meaning it is in and of itself not a gateway drug. It does not lead to other use of other more dangerous drugs, for example. And the U.S. government has about every decade or so established commissions to study the safety of the plant. And starting back in the 1940s with the LaGuardia Commission, which found that there not only was there no dangerous effect of the plant, so to speak, but that it actually was a wonderful therapeutic substance. And these studies have been repeated just about every decade sponsored by the U.S. government. The most recent one by the Institute of Medicine. Again, every single study is without a shadow of a doubt demonstrating not only the effectiveness of the cannabis but the safety as well. So there is a lot of misinformation. The danger with cannabis comes from social pressure, not the actual chemical constituencies of the plant. So in the past, before in states where cannabis is not legal as a medicine, people have to go buy their marijuana on the street. And a lot of the times the people who are selling the cannabis, for example, are also dealing in more dangerous products. So there is a predisposition for people using cannabis as a street drug to be exposed to some of the more dangerous elements, such as cocaine and heroin, et cetera. But the actual chemical constituency of the plant, there's not a single molecule in cannabis that makes people want to use more of another substance. And there are also no toxic effects of cannabis. So, for example, the lethal dose of smoking cannabis is 15 pounds of cannabis smoked in 15 minutes. And it's not the actual THC that causes the death, but it's the carbon monoxide from the smoke inhalation that is the lethal factor.
15 pounds?
What's that? 15 pounds of cannabis, 15 in 15 minutes. 15 and 15 minutes. It literally can't be done. It's not something that can be done. So if you look at the propaganda that came out against cannabis in the late 30s, which is classically portrayed in, for example, the movie Reefer Madness, what they were telling people in the 30s was, if you smoke cannabis, you're going to go home and murder your family and then do all these terrible things. And that's obviously not what happens when people smoke cannabis. But there is quite a propaganda campaign because I can tell you with beyond the shadow of a doubt that almost all of my patients who make a switch to cannabis use less of their regularly prescribed pain medication. And so therefore I think that what cannabis offers is it offers a solution to a patients, but it offers pharmaceutical manufacturers a potential loss of their market share in a very large growing segment of our population which needs pain relief at this time.
I don't know if I can say this or if this is a good thing to say, but I know that, I use cannabis medically and, I have an ailment, but also something that I don't, tell people about is that, I guess I used to be, or could say I was, classified as an alcoholic, and have gone to treatment before and actually had counselors say, when I told them that cannabis helps me not drink, and, they told me that, that's like switching drugs, but, when I look at it, for me, and when I look at certain things, and when people drink, or like the people that drove the wrong way on the freeway, or all the people that die from drinking, it doesn't seem to, make sense for it not to be, at least for people that are alcoholics to know of it and maybe know that, it could actually, help them.
You bring up an important point, and I didn't get your name. What is your name?
My name's Tom.
Tom, you bring up an important point, and the important thing with patients who are in addiction and recovery programs is an awareness of their triggers. So for some alcoholics, for example, cannabis could potentially be a trigger, and that would not be advisable for them. But for many alcoholics, cannabis actually helps relieve the withdrawal symptoms, which can be quite serious in a lot of the alcoholics. Science also shows that cannabis reduces the use of opiate medication in patients who are prescribed the opiates. So cannabis is really more of an exit drug than an entry drug, and that is, I think, very well established in across all drug spectrums with the exception of tobacco. Cannabis can be an entry drug for tobacco, and the main reason for that is the use of blunts or European style, where people do mix in a little bit of tobacco with their cannabis. Other than that, what the studies show is that cannabis actually will help patients with their alcohol withdrawal symptoms, will help patients with cocaine withdrawal, it helps patients with opiate withdrawal symptoms. And honestly, also, if we talk economics, addiction experts are a big part of their business is cannabis treatment. So there is, if you look at the financial piece of it, there is a little bit of a skew there. Of all the major medical groups, many of which, including the AMA, the largest medical association, have come out in favor of cannabis as a medicine. But the addiction specialists are still, a lot of them, saying, no, we don't like it. So I think a part of that, Tom, is social. There is a social connection, again, through the dealer on the street, where cannabis can introduce people to other more dangerous medications. But it's not a medical problem. It's more of a cultural problem.
Right.
And that's an excellent question. Yes, you're very welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom, for calling in. Those were excellent questions.
Welcome to Illuminations Radio, here to inspire you to go deeper into your roots, to go back into your true self. As you seek within, you will discover real health, joy, and wealth. As you travel through space-time of your own heart-mind, you will come to recognize you, and only you, as master, knowing that deep within your soul lies every attained goal. Yes, everything you've been after. Greetings, this is Tamara Westwood, your host. We all know what the problems are, but here at Illuminations Radio, together we seek solutions in every aspect of life, from health and spirituality to relationships and finance, and everything in between. with a variety of guests who are making a difference and shining examples in our collective adventure called life. Recording live on Blog Talk Radio from Seattle, Washington. But wherever you are in the world, join us live by logging into blogtalkradio.com/illuminations. Join the chat room or call 347-838-9577 to join in the conversation. Ask a question or just say hello. Or listen 24/7 by subscribing to the free podcast at the iTunes Store. Search iTunes Podcasts for Illuminations, healthy food for the mind, body, and soul.
Yes, it does seem to always go back to money, doesn't it, and finance, people doing what's best for themselves.
Keep the money as a thought process. There are so many people in medicine who are in medicine to help people, but I think we are naive if we ignore the bottom line, the financial bottom line.
True. We have a question from our chat room, Doctor, and it is from Kuzo Heel, and he says, Dr. Jake, thank you for your very knowledgeable and articulate interview. Are you optimistic about medical cannabis ultimately becoming illegal at the national level?
I am optimistic. I'm very optimistic about that. I think that the genie is out of the bottle, and there's no way to put the genie back in the bottle. A couple of things that I fear about that. I like, because strain creation is so important, and as we talked about, CBDs bring a whole new dimension. It's now, with the new science and the new ways to measure cannabinoids in plants with chromatography, et cetera, we are going to be able to grow better medicine. In fact, the best quality of cannabis for health has not yet been developed, in my opinion. So if there is an FDA or a government takeover of the industry where you have to kind of go to a state store, kind of like you go to a liquor store to get liquor, I think that we're going to see a decrease in the innovation that's going on with new and different strains of the plant. I think that a typical patient should have 3 or 4 different strains that work well for them, and you find that kind of by trial and error. And some strains are much better for daytime use, for example. Other strains are better for nighttime use because they make you sleepy. A daytime use will prevent you from going to sleep. Some cannabis plants are very good for chemotherapy patients. Others are good for pain. So we're developing these new plants and new strains of plants, and I would think that if it were a state store type of a situation, a lot of that innovation would be gone. I do think that there is going to be quite a bit of pushback. Just watch, just have listeners pay attention to the media and think who is benefiting financially from this, and that can give you a lot of information about why it's happening.
True.
I think that for every patient of mine that is helped by cannabis, not only is that one voter, but a whole family and community of voters comes along with it. Especially when these are like old people, your grandfather or your grandmother who have been through the ringer and have tried surgery and have tried physical therapy and have tried NSAID medication and prescription opiate medication and just really are out of options to come to the cannabis and try it and to get relief. That is not only a story within the family, but that's a story within the community. And I think that that's a large reason why now over half of all Americans support the medical legalization. And I think that every patient who has that access, if you're to take it away from them, that's not going to be very politically expedient, in my opinion.
I would say that it is definitely going to be an issue on the ballot. So
there was I've tweeted about this, and there was a Google town hall meeting which was a brand new feature of the new presidential election, and 18 out of 20 questions submitted were cannabis questions. But yet none of them were answered by any of the candidates. So it's still a hot potato, still a very hot potato that nobody really wants to touch, because no matter what you say, you're going to lose votes somewhere. So I think to say to listeners, pay attention to the wording and how things are worded, and look to see who financially benefits, and you can determine a lot from that.
Oh, most definitely. Well, Doctor, you're bringing up a lot of questions to mind. I have so many more. Some more about inflammatory bowel disease. If we can go back into the health for a moment.
Sure.
It seems to be on a rise. A lot of people are dealing with, irritable bowel, are dealing with so many issues with the gut there.
Yes.
What can you say about it?
Well, medically, you have to draw a very fine line or clear line between IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, and irritable bowel disease. So irritable bowel disease would be like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. These diseases can have potentially lethal consequences. So patients can die from Crohn's disease, or you have to go in for a surgical procedure and have your colon removed, and it's just a very potentially dire consequences, versus IBS, which is very uncomfortable and painful and can create a lot of problems for patients, but is not as life-threatening. Cannabis helps all of them, and with some of the more serious conditions like Crohn's, I am having patients using Simpson oils, because when you take the Simpson oil in, it kind of acts and it coats the entire inside of the digestive tract. So there is a localized anti-inflammatory effect of the cannabis oils that we think are better than the oils we think are better than the raw flower product. So when you're doing an edible, you can either use an oil or you can use a powderized form of the leaf, and it's the oils that are doing a much better job for some of these very sick people. Also, for all of those symptoms, a lot of them come with nausea and vomiting. We know cannabis is good for that. A lot of them also come with wasting, where patients lose weight because they're not hungry and they can't eat. Cannabis is very good for that. And topically, we talked about the creams and the lotions and the salves. For anyone who's having abdominal cramping that is associated with either IBS or Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, you can put a topical lotion over the belly, and then a lot of patients will put a little heating pad on top of that, and that topical application is good for the cramping. It's not going to provide an anti-inflammatory effect to the tissues like the oil does, but it's still another way to get good relief.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, it looks like we have another caller. Let's see.
Great.
Welcome, caller. Did you have a question for Dr. Jake Falice? Hello, caller, in the 425. You're on the air. Oh, I guess they're just listening. So wonderful. Well, Doctor, another really pertinent question that's been on my mind for quite a while, with all of these confusing legalities about it, that it is legal in some areas of some states, yet it is still against federal law. What position does that put you in as a physician who may recommend it for patients?
That's a great question. It can put me in a tricky position sometimes as a physician. The law is the federal law is quite clear, and the state law is quite clear, so that as a physician, I can steer clear of violating both federal and state laws. In Washington State, we make a recommendation authorization versus a prescription. To write a prescription for cannabis is a federal offense because it's a Schedule I drug. But what the Washington law does is it allows physicians to write a recommendation authorization on tamper-resistant paper that then becomes the legal document. So as a physician, I'm not in a legal bind, but I can sometimes be in an ethical bind when, for example, I have a sick patient who's in my office who is requesting that I not contact his primary care physician and let him know that he or she is taking cannabis. And so what I do in that case is I explain my position to the patient, and I let them know that I do think in a perfect world, medically, it's best for you to tell your doctor everything that you're doing, but that I understand the patient's predicament, that the patient doesn't want to be confessing to a federal crime to their physician. So we're still in a dilemma here, and so that brings up some ethical issues sometimes for me in terms of what is in my patient's best interest. So if a patient does request that I don't communicate this particular aspect with their physician, we have a lengthy conversation about that. And then in my clinic, I do have patients sign a waiver form just so that we can be clear that what conversation we have had. And I really don't like to do that. I would rather honestly have it be fully legal. It's still going to be a good medicine, whether it's legal or illegal. And if it's fully legal, then I know what I think is best for the patient, and I could be there to deliver that care, that service, and that product in a timely manner. And we're still not in a position with the current laws and the current industry to be able to do that.
Well, excellent. You certainly do take that oath, that Hippocratic oath.
The patient comes
do
first.
No harm.
Yes.
Do no harm, and that's beautiful. And you know another thought about the whole cannabis idea. What do you think? I mean, certainly you can only share your personal views if you would like to do so on just legalization of it for recreational use for everyone and not just patients.
There was the study that really kind of flipped my mental thinking about cannabis was a binge drinking study, where they were looking at alcohol binge drinkers, and they were looking at the liver damage that was caused by alcohol. And they decided to do a couple of different groups, and one was an alcohol-only group, and then you have a control group, and then they also looked at alcohol users, heavy alcohol binge drinkers who are also heavy users of cannabis. And don't you know, Tamara, what they found was that even though they were drinking the same amount of alcohol, that their livers were receiving less damage. And that's another thing and it's another thing where the CBDs are very important. The cannabidiol is very important. When CBDs are present, CBD has actually been shown to reverse liver fibrosis, which is a very, very unheard of thing. Liver fibrosis happens after the liver has been beaten up and abused for a long period of time. The liver starts to develop fibrosis, and that's kind of a step on its way to more serious diseases, fatty liver, liver cancer. And the fibrosis with cannabis, with CBDs, actually is showing in some tissue studies to be reversible. So not only are we seeing this in a clinical setting with binge drinkers who are also using cannabis having less damage with their liver, we're also seeing clinical data on tissue studies showing that, yes, the cannabis is actually preventing a lot of the activity. And so I think that it is a much more benign product than alcohol, for example, we discussed earlier. And I believe it was Tom, our first caller, who made the distinction between using high amounts of alcohol and cannabis being a trigger. But what we do see, in fact, is that a lot of people will reduce their use of opiate medications and alcohol because they're using cannabis. Another very interesting study along those lines was a driving accident study where they took a large number of medical cannabis patients, and what they realized was that medical cannabis patients are having 9% fewer driving fatalities because they are drinking less alcohol. The cannabis users are safer drivers because, on average, they're drinking less alcohol. It's very interesting. I'm not sure if the study authors made that extrapolation on their data, but it's certainly something that sprung to my mind when I saw that information, that, wow, there's actually an indirect benefit to cannabis use, predisposing people to use less alcohol, which then leads to fewer automobile accidents. A very interesting way to think about it.
It really, really is. And let's face it, as human beings, we are going to look for ways of escapism. And so
That's right.
It might as well be with things that are actually going to begin to heal the body and not harm the body.
Absolutely, Tamara. And there's a whole field of addiction treatment called harm reduction, where and it's based more on the European model, whereas our American model is based to a large degree on abstinence. But the idea of switching one harmful substance to a different, less harmful substance is a step forward. And, we all know what we want in a perfect world, but sometimes there are steps along the way. And so the harm reduction approach to cannabis, I would much rather have my patients using cannabis than street heroin or binge drinking. And I would also, if their pain is controlled, in my professional opinion, I would rather have them using cannabis than, say, OxyContin or something that is potentially lethal like that. Because, those affect those deaths are on the increase, and they affect a wide, broad spectrum of our culture.
Oh, they do. And I would just want to say that the war on drugs is certainly a war, and it's creating many, many issues.
And on the war on drugs, it takes away for the use of cannabis for a sick patient, putting them in jail. It takes away their freedom. It takes away their ability to pursue their own happiness. It puts an immense amount of stress on the patients and can further exacerbate their medical conditions. And I just do not think that the immense expense that we are putting to destroy people's lives is benefiting our culture, and that I think that we could do this in a much more intelligent, compassionate way that helps everybody.
Oh, most certainly. Well, again, I thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Jake Falice.
My pleasure. It was absolutely enjoyable. The hour went by so quickly. I would be so happy if you'd like to do this again some other time, Tamara.
I would
love
to. I would love to. But before we let you go, I just want you to share information, contact information, blog information, information about any classes that you might teach for our listeners.
For all of that information, you can access my website, drjakefalice.com. There should be a link on the Illumination site. You can also Google search me, Jake Falice. I am in private practice, and I in Seattle, Washington, and I do work at Cascadia Natural Health. I'm up there on Tuesdays and once a month on the weekends. So if patients or listeners have questions, you can contact me through my website. And I very much like to have dialogue. Feel free to make comments. I will be doing medicinal herb walk classes that are not cannabis-related, which you can see posted on my website. And I just encourage everybody. There are a lot of good videos and a lot of good information and a lot of links to other areas. That's drjakefalice.com.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I thank everyone who joined us in the chat room. I thank everyone who called in, Tom, our listener. Just peace and blessings, and take excellent care of your health. Remember, Illumination, healthy food for the mind, body, and soul.
This is Tamara Westwood, your host, signing off. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please send all comments and ideas to Tamara at illuminationssoultherapy.com. Remember to join us live on Blog Talk Radio by logging into blogtalkradio.com/illuminations. And never miss a show by subscribing to the free podcast at iTunes Store. Search iTunes Podcasts for Illuminations, healthy food for the mind, body, and soul.